Welcome to the first ever Filipino American History Month virtual celebration. My name is John Paul Ferrer. I am going to be one of your co hosts. I am the current president of the International uh, Society of Filipino in Finance and Accounting and Midwest Filipino American Coalition. With me today is my co host, Ginger.
Thank you, John Paul. Hello, everyone. My name is Ginger Leopoldo, and I am a member of the Filipino American National Historical Society in Chicago and the artistic director for Circa Pintig, a community arts organization. JP, how wonderful it is to be celebrating another Filipino American History Month. Every year in October, our community has been coming together to celebrate, honor, and commemorate an aspect of our heritage and culture. And more importantly, this month we focus on our history. Thus, it is called Filipino American History Month. Today, we will be recognizing individuals and organizations who are outstanding and who are sharing part of the calendar with you as well, letting everyone know about the events that we have planned. So, JP, can you tell me what does Filipino American History Month mean to you?
Well, Ginger, I moved here from the Philippines in 1988, and I didn't get active in the community until about 2000. So that was a long absence of celebrating cultures. We're great at fundraising and celebrating galas. And the one thing that was missing there is actually celebrating history. In 2010, I ended up attending the opening ceremony in the Skokie Library where Alpha Nicolasin was the host and Sama Sama Project performed. And I was hooked. The celebration that we experience are great. The food are great. But the one thing that actually I learned through the history here in the U.S. is that there's a lot of Filipino American that were instrumental in influencing our freedom and the lifestyle that we're enjoying here in the USA. We went from Larry Itliong with the Non-Farm Workers Union. And of course, this is also part of the Hispanic Heritage Month that we're sharing. And it's a little known fact that Cesar Chavez and Larry Itliong marched together for fair wages in those farm workers. So it's really an important month because the people that got this passed through the Congress to celebrate Filipino American History Month are the ones that we celebrate. And of course, this year with the frontliners, they're the real heroes putting their lives in line to fight COVID 19. So that really means a lot to me, Ginger.
Yes, I agree, JP. You know, I myself am a proud 1.75 generation Filipino American. And although I was born in Quezon City, Philippines, I've lived in Chicago since I was 5. So I'm really more of a Chicagoan. But this is exactly why I always seek ways to stay connected with our community. This part of my identity as a Filipina and an American really has me seeking out ways to be involved. I'm, in addition, an artist and an educator, so I enjoy celebrating and sharing our culture, heritage, and history with others. And this time of year is very important, not just for me, but also my family. So let's officially begin our celebration by first presenting the Philippine National Anthem by playing this video courtesy of GMA.
Ang dugong gumuho ng ating kasaysayan, ng ating pagkatao, ng ating lahi, ay ang dugo ng kabayanihan. Mula sa mga bakas na iniwan ng ating mga ninuno, ating ipinagpapatuloy ang kanilang nasimulan sa mga paraang hinihingi ng anumang panahon. inspirasyon. Dahil ang apoy na sumiklab ilang siglo na ang nakalilipas ay nabubuhay pa rin sa atin magpahanggang ngayon. Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
And now we will hear the U.S. National Anthem performed by Emilion M. Nicolason Jr., one of our awardees and a frontliner worker at Advocate Lutheran General Hospital.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we once were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
And now for a welcome message from the Philippine Consul General, Gina Hamerlin.
I would like to congratulate the Filipino American National Historical Society and the Filipino organizations in Chicago and Illinois in organizing this year's kick-off ceremony celebrating the Filipino American History Month with the theme History of Filipino American Activism. We all know that the Filipinos were the first to have organized the first ever nonviolent People's Power Revolution in EDSA in 1986, which sparked many people's revolution, nonviolent, around the world, including the revolution in Eastern Europe, leading to the fall of the Berlin Wall and the fall of the Soviet Union in the early 90s. The Filipino American History Month recognizes the significant contribution of the Filipinos in the United States, a growing economic and political force. We should be proud of where we came from, what we have accomplished, and our great potential as a people. Let us all work together towards strengthening the pride and legacy of the Filipino Americans in the United States and promoting the enduring friendship with the American people. Allow me to congratulate Mr. Ruben Salazar and his hardworking team in making this year's event possible. Maraming salamat at mabuhay tayong lahat.
And now the proclamation from Mayor Lori Lightfoot, City of Chicago, which will be highlighted by Alpha Nicolasin.
I have the honor of reading an excerpt from the mayor's proclamation thus. Whereas the Filipino American Historical Society established Filipino American History Month in 1988 to commemorate the arrival of the first Filipinos who landed in what is now Morro Bay, California on October 18, 1587. And whereas October has been designated as Filipino American History Month to celebrate and promote the history, culture, and contributions of Filipino Americans in Chicago around the world. Now, therefore, I, Lori E. Lightfoot, Mayor of the City of Chicago, do hereby proclaim October 2020 to be Filipino American History Month in Chicago and encourage all residents to acknowledge the enduring legacy and ongoing impact of the Filipino American community and join with them in celebrating this month. Dated this first day of October 2020, signed Lori E. Lightfoot, Mayor, City of Chicago.
Thank you for reading the proclamation. And now for this year's theme, the history of Filipino American activism, and specifically the frontliners and the role in representing PhilAms in the fight of COVID-19. We are now ready to begin our awards ceremony. But before we do this, we are highlighting some of the activism that we see here in our community. There are activism that happened in 2017 around the Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights. Not too long ago in the Albany Park neighborhood of Chicago, there was PhilAm activism around parents who are against gun violence. And just yesterday, congratulations to the Illinois Nurses Association. The UIC workers won a fair contract that respects them, protects them, and pays them. So here is another photo that shows how more than 800 nurses at University of Illinois Hospital in Chicago walked off the job on Saturday morning, demanding for much more. As we see here, this was on September the 12th, and after some time, they won and got what they had asked for. We'll be hearing more about this as well. And for the 2020 Filipino American History Month Awards, we are here to honor outstanding Filipino Americans and organizations. Our first award goes to some frontliners, and presenting the awards are representatives from the Philippine Consulate General's Office and the Philippine American National Historical Society of Chicago. So I would like to present Council Ryan Hiner and President of the Filipino American National Historical Society of Greater Chicago Chapter, Ruben Salazar.
Council Ryan, you want to say a quick hello so that you can be recognized, please?
Thank you, JP and Ginger. It's my pleasure to be here to be one of the presenters of the awards to our frontliners. Thank you very much.
And of course, everybody knows the next guest, Ruben Salazar. If you've seen our previous taping, is the extraordinary taster of Chicago Filipino Restaurant Week. Tito Ruben. You might be on mute, Tito Ruben.
Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. As JP had introduced me, everyone knows me by the name Tito Ruben, and I'm humbly honored to be doing this kickoff of Filipino American History Month celebration. And it's not just me, but everyone in the community with help of key people that you see here in the Zoom call. So thank you very much. And I'll be back to award the awardees the certificate of recognition.
Great. Thank you, Tito Ruben. And Ginger, it's pretty exciting because not only are we going to recognize the frontliners that are key to the fight against COVID-19, we're also recognizing an organization that had been known through arts and theater for social justice.
This is right, JP. So we look forward to hearing from all of the awardees and including learning more about the organization Circopintig, which is also being awarded. Let's go on ahead and begin. JP, if you can please help introduce our first award.
Yes, the first awardee is Joanne Torija. She is a registered nurse at Silver Cross Hospital Primary COVID Unit. She graduated at Iloilo Doctors Hospital in 1993 and started her career at Western Visayas Medical Center in Iloilo City. On March 2020, as the pandemic has progressed, her unit at the Silver Cross Hospital, together with another unit, was converted to become the COVID unit of the hospital because of the capability and the way that they're able to manage the pandemic. Joanne is a member of the Chicago Filipino Lions Club, JDRCF, the Philippine Independence Week Committee, Kickoff Committee for 2020, the Kankakee Santa Cruzan Group, and the PNA, which are the Philippine Nurses Association Greater Chicago Chapter. And Ginger, she's got one of the best quotes that you could hear. Her goal in life is to do small things with great love, as quoted by Mother Teresa. She said that when you're a nurse, you either touches your patient's life or they touches yours. Wow. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our first awardee, Joanne Torija. And Joanne, you might be on mute.
Thank you, JP, for that very nice introduction. Before I start, I want to introduce my husband right here with me, RJ Torija. And good evening, everyone. I want to say I am very extremely honored to receive this award, this great award from Filipino American History Month. Thank you to the Filipino American National Historical Society and Philippine Consulate General in Chicago for recognizing the frontliners in this year's celebration of the Filipino American History Month. I salute all the frontliners, the countless frontliners and essential workers, and several others who risked their lives in fighting and helping others in this pandemic. Let me tell you a little bit about my journey. So last March, when this pandemic started, I received a call from my manager informing me that our unit will be converted into an airborne unit or a COVID unit to make space for our PUIs or person under investigation and COVID positive patients. So she basically asked me if I was willing to stay and work. And I was like, did somebody actually said no from my coworkers? And she said, yes. They said no, but they have a good reason. And at that time, I can't find any good reason for me. So I just said, you know what, somebody has to take care of these people, right? So that was the start of it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I've never seen so much human suffering um, and from this disease. And I've seen so many people died from this disease. So many people were fighting for their life and for weeks and even months, and ended up dying anyway. And this disease does not discriminate. I remember my first COVID patient then was a young man. He was, when I entered his room, he was watching the TV with the COVID news. And he was scared, he was very withdrawn, he was very quiet, and every day he gets sicker and requiring more oxygen. But I'm glad to say that he survived. He was discharged. I also remember a patient once asked me, a young patient, if she was going to make it, because she has 2 children waiting for her at home. And also remember a patient telling me he wants to live. A lot of patients telling me they want to live and didn't make it. And I can go on and on and on with the story. At the end of our shift, we're exhausted physically, mentally, and emotionally. Physically, because the struggle of putting PPE on and off for 12 hours and taking our very sick patient is a lot to handle. We almost have to do everything from passing trays on lunch, breakfast, and dinner, and emptying garbages, aside from doing our basic nursing care. So the emotional toll on our staff is high every day. Every day we care for this patient struggling to survive. We don't allow families to visit unless the patient is dying. So we were the gap between the patients and their families. We help patients call their families and loved ones if they are able to. And sometimes we have to break the sad news to the families if the patient is not doing well. Most of the time, I remember driving home crying. And not to mention, we worry about being sick ourselves and bringing COVID-19 to our families. It's very stressful for us too. So it's been 7 months, and today I still take care of 4 COVID patients every time I work. What kept me going is the support I get from my coworkers, the random acts of kindness from the community, the support from our patient's family and the doctors, specifically the infectious disease doctors, Dr. Garganero's group right here, and the pulmonary doctors who we work side by side with, who once told us how they appreciate each one of us for the dedication we provide for this patient. Was very rewarding to hear. My fear and anxiety has lessened, but my work has never gotten easier. This will forever be the highlights of my career, something I can look back 15, 20 years from now and say I was there. So thank you again, FANHS and Philippine Consulate. I will be forever grateful for this award and something I will cherish forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. And of course, I would like to call on Tito Ruben and actually Consul Ryan to recognize Joanne and present her award.
Thank you, JP. It is indeed my pleasure to present this certificate, this award to Ms. Joanne Torija for your sustained activism, contribution, and commitment to the preservation, promotion, and appreciation of Filipino American history and heritage in an effort to further empower the Filipino American community in the greater Chicago area. This award is given on October 2, 2020 in Chicago, Illinois. Congratulations, Ms. Joanne.
Joanne, did you want to address Consul Ryan?
I'm muted. Thank you again, Consul Ryan and the FANHS and Philippine Consulate. I want to dedicate this award to all my coworkers, all the frontliners and essential workers. Again, keep doing what you're doing. Thank you for your commitment and sacrifice. And I also want to remember those who lost their lives and the families who lost their loved ones this pandemic. Thank you to my family, my husband, who was my support system this whole time. And lastly, I want to say that working as a nurse is tough, but COVID-19 made it tougher. My patience and endurance has never been tested this much. This pandemic has made me appreciate the gift of life and made me appreciate the gift of friends and families. In spite of that challenge, I can still say that I've never been prouder to be a nurse. I've never been prouder to be a bedside nurse. Thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanne, for your heroism. Now, for our next awardee, we will be recognizing another frontline worker. And JP, are you able to introduce our next awardee?
Yes, it is actually one of our awardees is the person who sang the U.S. National Anthem, Emilio M. Nicholson Jr. He is an intraoperative technician, ambulatory surgery center at Advocate Lutheran General Hospital in Park Ridge, Illinois. He's got a video message for us, but the one thing that highlights him, and for those of you that knows him, he is kind of known as the singing nurse, and his positive disposition in life makes him a pleasure to be around. So let's go listen to his message.
Before my family and I migrated to the US, I worked for a multinational pharmaceutical company that produced vaccines. Part of my job was explaining to medical practitioners the efficacy of the vaccines my company produced. I was born into a family that loved music. My father was one of the first tawag ng tanghalan champions in Manila. He was very supportive of my love for music and arts and was really happy and proud that I became a tawag ng tanghalan champion myself in northern Mindanao. I have been in healthcare for almost 2 decades now. From the first day that I worked in a nursing home, I began to make use of music as a tool to connect to both my coworkers and patients. When patients didn't want to do their rehab, I talk and sing to them, and they would allow me to do their rehab. Once I had a Japanese patient who was in so much pain and didn't want to do her rehab for the day. I sang to her in Japanese, and after that, she felt well enough to do her rehab with me. I built friendships with patients and families through music. I used music therapy with my patient even before it was a thing. Because of the pandemic, everyone's stress level is extremely high. This is especially true for healthcare workers like me. Frontliners and other essential workers are exposed to the risk of getting the virus every day that we go to work. I use music as usual to relieve the stress and to brighten the day at work. My coworkers and patients appreciate it when I sing to them. Sometimes they even request for me to sing their favorite songs. By the way, one day, one of our top breast cancer surgeons asked me to sing the Star Spangled Banner. I did not know why she did it first, but it turned out that they were looking for someone to sing the national anthem at the Real Bears Fans Wear Pink Day on the October 8th game between the Chicago Bears and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They sent the video to the Bears organization, and out of the many healthcare workers, I was chosen. I am happy to represent not just the healthcare workers, but my fellow Filipino Americans. It is a privilege to do something like this, to help ease our worries during this pandemic. My thoughts and love go to my fellow healthcare workers, most of whom are Filipinos. My prayers go to the families who lost loved ones to COVID 19. It is my hope that a vaccine and a treatment will be available soon. In the meantime, while we in healthcare take the risk for everyone, please wear a mask in public, practice social distancing, wash your hands. Salamat and maligayang Filipino American History Month.
And now to present the award is Tito Ruben Salazar.
Hello. I'd like to present the award to a good friend of mine. I've known him for 10 years now, or over 10 years. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us today because he has to work 12-hour shift. So to receive Emil's award is his lovely wife, Alpha Nicolasin. So I'm proud to present the Filipino American History Month Award to Emil Nicolasin Jr. for his sustained activism, contribution, and commitment to the preservation, promotion, and appreciation of Filipino American history and heritage in an effort to further empower the Filipino American community in the greater Chicago area. This award is given today, October 2, 2020, here in Chicago. So I'm calling Alpha to receive the award for Emil Nicolasin, and she will be giving the acceptance speech for Emil. Go ahead, Alpha.
All right. Um, First of all, congratulations, Joanne, Dr. Dan, and Circa. Thank you for all that you do. And on behalf of my husband, my pangga, Emilio Nicolasin Jr., I would like to dedicate this award to his beloved parents, the late Papa Miling, and the amazing Mama Junie, who turned 92 on September 28th. Um, to his mother-in-law, Mami Lumen, our children, Paolo, Trina, Josh, Anna, our daughter-in-law, Natalie, and grandson, Elijah Knox. And lastly, his fellow healthcare workers and colleagues at Advocate Lutheran General Hospital. He would like to thank Tito Ruben and the Filipino American National Historical Society in Chicago, Consul General Gina Hamerlin, and the Philippine Consulate General in Chicago, and every single one of our fellow Filipino Americans in the greater Chicago area who have become our extended family. Kapamilya at kapuso, lahat sila. Salamat po, and God bless you all.
Congratulations, Emil.
Congratulations.
And Ginger, I'm getting goosebumps because here's the thing. We're talking about social activism, but we're actually seeing the frontliners, the people that are out there in the front line and actually making things happen and not only being brave as to risk their own lives, but they're saving lives. And these are Filipino Americans that we all should be proud of. Our next awardee, his name is Dr. Dan Anthony Garganera. He is the medical director of COVID-19 Emergency Services and chairman of Infection Control Department for Amita Health St. Joseph Medical Center in Joliet, Illinois. We're going to hear live from him to kind of give us a preview of what he had to go through from when this pandemic actually ravaged our hospital systems. He is a board certified in internal medicine and infectious diseases in private practice since 2002. Early on, he was actually tasked to organized the response unit for COVID-19 in the AMITA system, health system, and the physician leadership. So he will share with us the changes that they did as the disease or this illness, the pandemic, progressed through the hospital system. So I'd like to introduce to you now Dr. Dan Anthony Garganera.
Hi, good afternoon. This is a presentation regarding COVID-19, which is about our experience and a little bit of a lecture regarding COVID-19. So I call this the notes from the field for COVID-19. I know we have been bombarded with a lot of information already about COVID-19 as we go through this huge pandemic. But let me just talk about a little bit about Filipino activism and what's been happening regarding the current status and information about coronavirus infection in our area. So we healthcare workers are in the front line of this pandemic, and Filipino nurses, CNAs, healthcare workers, and essential workers, as well as physicians and NPs, are all over the place as front and center of this pandemic. And according to our statistics, there's actually more than 500,000 immigrant registered nurses in America, and more than a quarter of these are actually Filipino Americans. There's actually 4% of the nurses in the whole United States are actually Filipinos, and in California, actually, it's 18%. This has hit us hard, and there's a lot of Filipino nurses and healthcare workers who have actually perished from COVID-19. And it was reported by a National Nurses United that 193 nurses actually died of COVID-19 in America as of August 24. Next. Regarding the Asian Americans, we're only 5.7% of the population, but 4.2% of COVID-19 related deaths are actually Asian Americans. And if you look at our statistics here, back in early August, our consulate here in Chicago actually reported 17 Filipino Americans actually perished or died already of COVID-19, and more than half of these were healthcare workers. All of us have witnessed that. And we've also seen that a lot of the predominance in the current infections now are minority populations, and this includes Asian Americans, and many of them are nurses. Now, as the infection control chairman in our hospital, we were actually able to track down the number of healthcare workers who get infected, and the majority of these are actually nurses, 41%. So the highest risk are nurses, followed by physicians and nurse practitioners, as well as those who work in respiratory therapy as well. Next slide. Now, for the COVID-19, there's a lot of risk for us, not just for healthcare providers, but also for everybody in the community. For us who are working in the hospitals and nursing homes, the biggest, of course, risk is in, getting in contact with our COVID-19 patients, especially if we do procedures on them. It's also been shown that we could also get COVID-19 from other healthcare workers. And in addition, now there's a big risk that we're seeing that we could also actually infect our patients in turn. So now screening and testing are very important for not just our patients, but also for our healthcare workers. Next slide. Now, outside of work, we know that the biggest factor is actually patronizing restaurants and bars. Of course, we have to support our local businesses, but precautions have to be made. There should be social distancing and all that, and as well as wearing masks or facial covering, and even eye protection as we go. Public transportation is a risk. A member of your household with COVID-19 is a risk. The biggest factor is, of course, working in a hospital or nursing home wherein you have to take care of COVID-19 patients. Next. So how do we protect ourselves? The biggest thing that we could do is really universal masking. One of the things that we demanded for activism as healthcare workers is to provide PPE or personal protective equipment to our staff. This was a great difficulty when the pandemic began because there was a shortage of PPE. And the different hospitals had difficulty providing adequate PPE to everybody. Eventually, when we were able to catch up with providing masks and protective gear, and universal masking, fewer and fewer people got infected. Now, looking backwards now, there's evidence that actually 6% of staff now in many hospitals and places have been infected with COVID-19. Now, 29% of these actually do not know that they were infected because about a third of healthcare workers who got infected never had symptoms, but unknowingly, they could actually infect other people, including their own colleagues or their own patients. So this is a very important thing to know, that even if you have no symptoms, you could be infected or other people could be infected, which makes us remember always to wear masks and wash our hands, not to touch our face, and to do social distancing in all circumstances. Next. So we all know that the transmission of COVID-19 is by droplet. In certain procedures, it could create aerosols, and it could also infect other people further away than 6 feet. And that's by aerosol procedures. And that's in this case, we need to wear full PPE, which includes an N95 mask, eye protection, gloves, and gowns. You could also get it from touching objects, especially high traffic areas, such as objects which are commonly touched, like telephones, doorknobs, things like that could also transmit the virus if we touch it and we touch our face or mucous membranes. Next. Now, how do we prevent it? Knowing how it is transmitted, we should always avoid touching our nose, eyes, and our mouth. We should avoid contact with people who are sick. As we showed earlier, 29% of people may have no symptoms. And so we should avoid being close to these other people who might be infected without our knowing. If we're sick, we should also stay at home. We should cover our cough and our sneeze with a tissue and dispose of it. The other recommendation is to wear a facial covering. It's practically universal now wherever you go. All those objects I mentioned earlier, which are frequently touched, should always be cleaned frequently. And hand washing is of prime importance with soap and water for 20 seconds, and alcohol-based hand rub as well is an alternative if you cannot wash your hands all the time. Next. Now, the next slide shows that if we are sick, we don't necessarily have to go to the hospital. In fact, many people are scared to go to the hospital. You could catch other diseases there. You could get COVID-19 there if you don't have it. So the recommendation now, if you're not critically ill, you should stay home. You should call your physician. And if you have warning signs, you need to go to the emergency room. You should call your doctor in the ER to warn them that you have possibly COVID-19, and so they could prepare to take you in. You should watch for the warning signs, which are chest pain, shortness of breath, passing out, cyanosis, or any signs of respiratory distress. You should also separate yourself from other people, including your own household, so you don't infect your own family members. You could try to stay in a different area of the house. You should maintain social distancing. You should cover your sneezing and your coughing and wear a mask. Also continue to do the hand washing. You should separate also your personal items, especially those that touch your mouth, such as your own silverware, your cups, your glasses, your plates, and high-touch surface areas, as I mentioned earlier, like doorknobs, telephones, remote controls should be cleaned frequently as much as possible. Next slide. Now, we are healthcare workers, and there's a lot of Filipinos who are healthcare workers. This is a very common question which we get asked every day in infection control. When can you come back to work? The current recommendation is you should isolate yourself for 10 days if you had symptoms, and you could return to work 10 days after if you no longer have fever for 24 hours. If you have critical illness, you are hospitalized, you are on oxygen, then that should be 20 days. If you're immune compromised, that isolation should also be 20 days. And for those who have been in contact with you who are not sick, the isolation is actually 14 days for those people. Now, the next slide shows that there's a test-based strategy which we don't really use. And these are being used only for nursing homes mainly because they prefer healthcare workers not to go back to the nursing home to infect the elderly who are very weak and high-risk population. Half of the deaths of COVID-19 are actually elderly from nursing homes. And so that's why they sometimes require us to be retested before we go back to the workplace. Next slide. It shows also now that there's always a question, why do we have to wait 14 days if we get exposed to somebody who has been sick? Now, many of us have nurses or doctors who are our spouses, and sometimes they get infected. If you do not get infected, your isolation should still be 14 days because it may take time for the virus to incubate and eventually show or manifests its symptom. So if you get tested immediately after you get exposed, your test may be negative because the virus hasn't replicated inside of your body yet. So you still have to isolate for 14 days. And if you want, you could get retested in the 14-day period before you get yourself out of isolation. This is important because you could be infected and you have no symptoms, as we mentioned earlier. And if you go back to work without being tested or isolated, you could actually be infecting people. And some of them could be vulnerable people who could actually die of the disease. Next. One of the very front and center now of what we're discussing are returning to school. School has opened up in many places. In some places, it's only in person. In some places, online only. And in some places, it's hybrid. This should be decided by each individual school and individual school district based on their own prevalence in the area and based on the parents' decision on what to do. Now, a lot of parents would like to go to work, and it's been shown that learning is impaired if you do it at home because of so many distractions. There's multiple issues too with internet access and computers like that. So if you go back to in-person learning, the most important thing you need to remember is the kid or the staff member who is sick should not be going to school in person. And everybody should monitor their symptoms. And the school needs to have a plan to cohort these people in class so that they're always going to be social distancing, staggering, doing cohorts, things like that. We need to promote social distancing and messing in the school, especially with sports. That's the most important thing. Next slide. The school administration should also always communicate to the parents and the staff that parents who are coming in, the staff member should have a face shield or mask if they're coming in contact with the students, and to have hand hygiene stations and hand sanitizers available there, as well as environmental cleansing. Remember, in schools, if 2 kids get sick, that's considered an outbreak if they're linked together. And that should be reported to the health authorities so that that could be taken care of to prevent more spread in the school. So that is a very important thing. Last slide. The isolation guidelines from the Illinois Department of Public Health show us, it's available on the website, and you could get a copy of this. For those without any symptoms, the same applies to return to work. It's also 14 days. If you have sickness or illness and symptoms, your isolation is 10 days. That's in the very first column, but on the last column there, for those without any symptoms but get in contact, the student or the teacher who got exposed with or without testing should be in quarantine for 14 days. It will be good or better for you to get tested before you go back to school so you don't infect your students or other kids in school. Lastly, there's many challenges that we still have to face in the future. Vaccination, as was mentioned earlier by Kuya Emil, herd immunity hopefully will develop as many of us get infected. But now we need to learn how to live with PPE and social distancing, how to live with a mask on, wearing it all day long, going to different places, groceries or restaurants. And we're hoping we'll get more new treatments now. This is a novel virus. So we need to keep up with treatments. And for us healthcare providers, that's a very important thing. So let's continue precautions and let's continue fighting this. We're all in it together. We need to continue our Filipino and healthcare activism to fight the virus. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dan. This was all very wonderful information, especially for all of us who are viewing our um, event today. And again, I'm a mother and a teacher as well, and that is one of the fears or the thoughts. I've got a high school student. What will happen when it is time to be back in person? And as you mentioned, there is some value in all of us being together, but we do have to take precaution. Dr. Dan, do you mind introducing who is there with you?
Oh, yes. By the way, this is my better half, my wife, Jessie. She's also a registered nurse.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello. Thank you both for, again, your courage, your heroism. And now to award for us, I would like to call again on Council Ryan, who will now award Dr. Garganera.
Thank you, Ginger. And before I present the award to Dr. Dan, may I just say a few words about the presentation? Thank you, Dr. Dan, for the comprehensive presentation on the COVID-19 information. One of the advocacies of the Philippine Consulate has been to disseminate the proper information to the Filipino community in the Midwest so that we could all prepare and tackle the pandemic and also prevent infections among the community. And in this regard, I think the presentation of Dr. Dan is very helpful in providing the needed information for the Filipino community. The second point I like to make, I guess, is that as pointed out by Dr. Dan, there are more than 150,000 Filipino nurses in the Midwest, in the whole of the United States. There are also thousands of doctors here in the US, and more than the knowledge, the competence, and the skills of these professionals, I think what stands out among Filipino nurses and doctors is the Filipino compassion, malasakit. It's the human touch and the care that I think is unique to us, and that's why we are so much in demand all over the US when it comes to taking care of patients. And the third point is that one of the things also that stood out is the generosity of the Filipino community here in the Midwest. The malasakit has shown through the bayanihan efforts in helping out each other, no? in giving resources to the needy and to those that would need food, would need medication, would need proper attention during this time of pandemic. And I think Sir Kapintig, one of the awardees for today, has been also instrumental in this initiatives. So therefore, I would like to present this award to Dr. Dan Garganera for your sustained activism, contribution, and commitment to the preservation, promotion, and appreciation of Filipino American history and heritage in an effort to further empower the Filipino American community in the greater Chicago area. This award is given on October 2, 2020, here in Chicago, Illinois. Congratulations, Dr. Dan.
Thank you very much. This is the thank you part now. So able to hear me?
You can. We're not sure whose phone is ringing, but yeah, I know you're busy.
We know
Sorry.
you're busy, Dr. Dan. This is okay.
Anyway, so Babuhay, I would like to thank again the Philippine Consulate, Consul Ferrer, and the Filipino American National Historical Society, and all of our officers, especially Tito Ruben and Kuya Noli there. Thank you for recognizing us all awardees during this Filipino American History Month, especially for all of us Filipino healthcare workers and essential workers who are front and center to this in this epidemic. I would also like again to thank my wife Jessie, who's a nurse, and my son AJ, who's been supporting me. It's been so busy, and these are unprecedented times. Just like what Joanne mentioned earlier, when we go back down the future, this is really the busiest time of our lives. So I would just like to mention briefly that this pandemic has really brought out our Filipino brand of activism, which is what our consul has mentioned. We have selfless service and compassion in the face of overwhelming difficulties and dangers for us frontline workers taking care of these COVID-19 patients. You know, in the beginning, we were beset with a lot of huge issues. We are dealing with a novel coronavirus, and so we have to take every precautions we have. It's like navigating a dark, narrow road, and we didn't know how to deal with it. But as we go fight along, we have our Filipino medical activist spirit. We have to fight for ourselves. We have to fight for our own protection so we don't bring coronavirus home with us and infect our own family, friends, and our colleagues. And we need to spare them from sickness as much as possible, and even worse, fatality. So when we started in the beginning, we had to fight for our right to get more PPE, more testing. We had to deal with a lot of difficult work conditions, like what John mentioned earlier, difficult work conditions, nurse-patient ratios. There's an overwhelming number of patients when we started. We had outbreaks from nursing homes and jail and our ventilator patients. The ICU was full in the beginning. So, and for me as a physician, another major issue was how to treat this virus. And we had a limited knowledge of this virus and the nature of the disease. So as Filipinos, you know, we're very malleable, adaptive, and resilient. So we were able to get the best treatments, the best new treatments that we could go with, and to fight this virus and be successful in our treatment and management. Now, from the scratch in the beginning, we didn't really have a lot to work with. So I'm also working for the health department, for Will County Health Department and the local hospital. We had to create committees. We had to create drive-through testing. We had to create new protocols and PPE guidelines for everybody, so we will be able to deal with it properly. So we have to. The biggest thing now, both of our awardees also mentioned it, we need to create support for our own healthcare workers because we have seen so much suffering and so much death. And we have our own family members who are, and not just our patients, but we have seen our own family members who got infected and even ourselves who got sick, and some people actually passed away. So we need to keep supporting each other that we don't get burnt out. So that's a big issue. Finally, I, for one, am proud of what we call the Filipino spirit, resilience, and ultimate care, or activism and selfless passion we have for other people. So thank you very much. Salamat po for this award. Let's continue to be there in the front lines and assist and help each other as Filipinos. And I appreciate everything our consulate does and the Filipino American National Historic Society. Thank you very much and mabuhay.
Right.
Thank you, Dr. Garganera. And everyone, we showed you three awardees. They're in the front lines. Since none of us have lived through a pandemic, they're defining what Filipino American spirits are. There's a lot of countless acts that everybody experienced throughout this pandemic, whether it be a restaurant owner giving the frontliners some meals because they're working long hours. So these are the kind of bayanihan that we all need. And in the time of troubles like now, this is absolutely inspiring. So thank you to all the awardees for your courage, for your selfless act, and the bravery and fighting the fight to keep us alive. So thank you very much. And on that note, Ginger, we're going to switch over to awarding an award to actually an organization that is true and dear to your heart. So next, we would like to introduce Circa Pintig to you. Circa Pintig is a community theater group that advocates social justices. I mean, we have COVID-19 that we're trying to deal with, but also all throughout the United States, we also have the Black Lives Movement currently going on. I personally know of people all around the nation, anywhere from Tony De La Rosa in Florida to TJ Mandel in the middle of Kansas. So we're actually we're faced with people, and I'm glad to have Circa Pintig here in the United States. So Ginger, why don't you take away and introduce us to Circa Pintig?
Thank you. Thanks so much, JP, John Paul. Again, as you mentioned, Circa Pintig is very near and dear to my heart. I actually had gotten involved with what was Pintig Cultural Group. Even before it was Pintig Cultural Group, it was called Cultura. And we were, in a way, recruited, or we were just engaged to learn about our history, our heritage, in ways that we would not be learning in the textbooks that we were reading in school. As I mentioned, I grew up here in Chicago in the Uptown neighborhood, and in my fifth grade social studies textbook, the only thing about the Filipinos were that we were barbarians that needed to be civilized. Now, as a young adolescent, I would have had a choice. Would I be proud to be a Filipino or not? And so, as an adolescent, I was introduced to the work of Pintig Cultural Group and was able to be shaped into the Filipino American that I am today. What I would like to share with you is the acceptance speech from our co founder and executive director, Angela Maskarenis. And so I will go on ahead and play the audio that she prepared for us, and I will share our screen. And this will be a little bit of a walkthrough of the work that we have done for nearly 3 decades now. So let's hear from Angela Maskarenis, co founder of Circa Pintig and our current executive director. And here is the audio.
It is with great joy and heartfelt gratitude that
we in Circa Pintig accept this award presented by the Philippine Consulate General and the Filipino American National Historical Society of Greater Chicago on the occasion of the 2020 Filipino American History Month celebration. We are deeply honored and humbled by this award, as this is an indication of the Filipino American community's recognition of our work and labor of love for the past 3 decades. Circa Pintig was born during the tumultuous times of the 1980s as a small street theater collective, performing during gatherings and mobilizations protesting the fascist dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos and its imperialist masters. Even after the dictator Marcos was deposed by the People's Power Uprising in 1986, we have remained steadfast in our commitment to continue the work of educating, organizing, and mobilizing on burning issues confronted by the most marginalized members of our Filipino communities, whether in Chicago, in the Philippines, or anywhere in the world. From its activist beginnings, Circa Pintig formally incorporated as a nonprofit organization in 1991, and the small collective of less than 10 members has grown into a large network of not only Filipino Americans, but other Asian and Latino immigrants and US-born individuals, with informal chapters today in California, Las Vegas, and New York as well. Our ATER members, artists, trainers, organizers, researchers, continue to bloom wherever they are planted. These active volunteers and supporters span 3 generations and has sustained Circa Pintig's work through the years with their talents, time, financial, and material contributions that made it possible for us to operate for about 30 years on a 100% volunteer basis. It is the tireless dedication and generosity of spirit of all of our members and members of our Circa Pintig family that we honor today as we accept this award. And as we look ahead to the coming years, we reaffirm our commitment to the same principles of collective, inclusive, and community-centered cultural work that has defined the Circa Pintig that you are honoring today. We are truly indebted and deeply grateful to the Filipino American and wider immigrant communities that have and continue to embrace, nourish, and inspire us. Much work remains to be done, but we will not be afraid or daunted for as long as we continue to have the love and support of our communities. Maraming salamat po.
We march on, though sometimes strange moods fill our children. Our march toward security and peace is the march of freedom, the freedom that we should like to become a living part of. It is the dignity of the individual to live in a society of free men, where the spirit of understanding and belief exists, of understanding that all men, whatever their color, race, religion, or state, should be given equal opportunity to serve themselves and each other according to their needs and abilities. But we are not really free unless we use what we produce. So long as the fruit of our labor is denied us, so long will want manifest itself in a world of slaves. It is only when we have plenty to eat, plenty of everything, that we begin to understand what freedom means. Thus, freedom is not an intangible thing. When we have enough to eat, then we are healthy enough to enjoy what we eat. When we have the time and ability to read and think and discuss things, then we are not merely living, but also becoming a creative part of life. It is only then that we become a growing part of democracy.
Again, on behalf of Circa Pintig, we thank you for recognizing the work that we do with the community. And we're just so very honored and grateful to be able to continue this work.
So now I'd like to call back Tito Ruben to present the award to Circa Pintig, to Ginger, on behalf of Circa Pintig. You might be on mute, Tito Ruben.
Sorry about
Okay.
that. Can you hear me now? So I'm back. I just, before I award the certificate to Circa Pintig, I just want to also congratulate all of the previous awardees, the healthcare workers who have been in the front line. They're our modern hero or our bayanis during this time of pandemic. When fans made the theme for this year, the history of Filipino American activism, I wasn't sure how we're going to or who we're going to award because activism is such a big topic. And in the West Coast, they have a lot of history of Filipino American activism. Here in Chicago, I thought about activism here in the greater Chicago area. But every day I hear news about this pandemic. And it finally dawned on me that what we really is activism right now is about the healthcare workers, especially many of them are Filipinos in the healthcare industry, in the front line, and not just healthcare workers, but all the essential workers. So we cannot award everybody, but we chose 3 healthcare workers that are in the front line, and I'm so proud of the accomplishments that they have done. So congratulations again to Joanne, to Emil, and to Dr. Dan. So each year since 4 years ago, we've been doing this award for Filipino American History Month. And in the past, we have awarded 2 organizations. So I thought, well, it's time to award another very active organization in the Chicago area. And of course, I think about Circa Pintig. Circa Pintig has been active or have shown or plays, stage plays that are all in the same topic of Filipino American activism. They've been around for 29 years, starting with a play on America's in the Heart, and you listen to quotes from Carlos Bolosan earlier, the author of the book America's in the Heart. So over the years, I've seen all their plays, and the last one being Huelga, which we just did for the celebration of Filipino American History Month, where they did a stage reading of Huelga. So I'm proud to present this next award to Circa Pintig. The Filipino American History Month Award is presented to Circa Pintig for your sustained activism, contribution, and commitment to the preservation, promotion, and appreciation of Filipino American history and heritage in an effort to further empower the Filipino American community in the greater Chicago area. This award is given today, October 2, 2020. And to receive this award is none other than one of our hosts for today and been active with Circa Pintig since its beginning. May I then call back Ginger Leopoldo.
Thank you, Tito Ruben, and thank you to the Consulate General of Chicago and to everyone here today. It has been, again, such a wonderful opportunity to serve our community, to be part of our community. Much of the work that we do is is about the process. So we see that the work is in the process. And when we engage young Filipinos, Filipino Americans, new immigrants to the US, this is where we kind of build together. And oftentimes in the plays that we usually have a talk back, a way for people to process the different issues that they just saw on stage. And this is what we find as a big contribution, is building awareness and educating. And just like our frontline workers here today, they too are to be much admired for their bravery and their courage and their heroism. So again, it's just such an honor for our organization to be awarded. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po.
I know that Circa Pintig is celebrating its 30th anniversary next year. So,
wow, that's amazing, Tito Ruben.
Yeah, I would volunteer, or I would like to be there for your 30-year celebration next year and hand the award to the rest of the people who have been part of Circa Pintig for the 30 years that they've been around. I know they have been hundreds of people that have been part of Circa Pintig over the years, and you guys all rock. So mabuhay sa inyong lahat.
Mabuhay. So this wraps up our segment. We would like to thank everybody. Ginger, it's been a pleasure co-hosting with you. And happy Filipino American History Month, everybody. Ginger, do you have anything to say before we wrap up?
No, I'm just looking forward to our calendar events. So we will be hearing and seeing more of what's to come. Make sure that you stay tuned to our social media. You can find information about the events coming up on the Facebook page of the Philippine American National Historical Society, Chicago. Also, we will be sharing the slideshow that we've been presenting during our ceremony today, so that everyone will have a chance to revisit and look back at who we've honored, and you'll have all of the information about who to contact for specific events this month. Thank you so much.
Great. Tito Ruben, you want to send us off?
Yes. Can you put us in gallery view, back to gallery view, and let's have a toast and cheer everybody. Congratulations to a job well done to all our awardees, and also to our MC or host for a great job, John Paul and Ginger. Do you want to put it back to gallery view, Ginger?
Yes, let's see.
So we are probably out of time. So just as a heads up.
Are we on gallery view now?
Can you see everybody?
I can see everyone, yes.
There we go.
All right.
Okay, we can cut this off in the video.
Cheers.
But Noli just wants to take another picture of everybody. So
cheers.
So Noli, cheers. Are you still there? Or can someone take a screenshot?
I'll take a screenshot, but I'll have to put my cheers glass down. But everyone smile, please. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations.
Mabuhay sa iyo lahat.
Mabuhay.
Bye.
Mabuhay. Salamat.